if you watched the review of commons, and now we're on to the uncommons. So let's start here with Artistic Refusal. It's a 12 mana spell card with Convoke 6. You may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. If you don't, drain 12 mana from your opponent's hand. Then your opponent discards the first card without mana from their hand. Just not enough to justify 12 casting costs. If this was like a 6 casting cost or something like that, it might be more usable, but well, I guess it could be with the Convoke 6, but still, it's a lot of mana to do something that shouldn't cost that much mana. So, moving on. Astral Wingspan. Speaking of, it's a 10 mana with 6 Convoke. Target creature gets +2/+2 and gains flying. Draw a card. I do like that the buffs are permanent and that it's an aura, so you can fetch it, but just not strong enough of an ability to really care. Change the equation. Another one of these mana drain spells. Drain 6 mana from your opponent's hand, and if your first card in your opponent's hand is a red or green card, your opponent... Well, see, this is what I wish that card before was. It's only cost 3 to cast, but what sucks is that your opponent's card needs to be red or green for it to be discarded. It should just be discard your opponent's first card for 3 mana, and that would be a definitely usable card. But the fact that you can only use it against red or green planeswalkers for the most part to make it effective makes it a no-go for me. Collective Nightmare, 6, but Convoke 4. Target opposing creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn. I just don't really like these debuff until end of turn cards. They just are too situational. They don't do enough. If it was like a -12/-12, then it would be a lot more effective. But or if the debuff was permanent, that could be usable as well. But as these cards stand right now, just not really worth using. I do like the artwork though. That's pretty cool. Completed Huntmaster. Phyrexian Elf Warrior. Activate 4 black. You may have target creature you control gain imminent death. If you do, create 2 incubator tokens. Those cards get oil counter 3. I'm sure there's some reason to use this card. It's not coming to mind right now. But if you guys think of a reason to want to use this card, let me know. Phyrexian Bear Rhino. Every now and again we get some of these kinds of cards. Trample and Hexproof 8/8. This is one of the more expensive ones. 23 mana for Hexproof and Trample. If it had haste, so if you pair this with Tyvar, then I guess that's okay, but I guess this is a very poor man's Gaia's Revenge. Yeah, if you have Gaia's Revenge, no reason to use this one. Corruption of Tawashi. Support card enchantment. When this support enters the board, create 2 incubator tokens, okay? When an incubator token you control is destroyed, draw a card, 3 mana. It can only trigger once per turn. Yeah, the once per turn thing kind of kicks it out of contention for being a playable card. I don't even know what incubator tokens do, but I'm guessing they are support cards that are tokens. So if there's a way to destroy incubator tokens easily, then maybe this card can see some play, but I don't see anybody actually using this card. So far, not a good uncommon yet. When an opposing creature attacks, deal 3 damage to that creature, destroy support. When opposing creature blocks, deal... Yeah, just too weak of a card. Even at 3 mana, it's kind of a waste of space. You're better off using one of those cards that just exile. So yeah, this is just too weak of a card to want to use, even at 3 mana. Fearless Skald. Creature Dwarf Berserker. It's got double strike. It's 3/2 with double strike, so that's actually not bad for 14 mana. When this creature enters the battlefield, target creature gets +2/+2, or +1/+1. If that target is not this creature, that creature gains double strike until end of turn. So I actually kind of like that. It's an easy way to give double strike to your creatures, and if you're doing this with, I don't know, like an Anhelo loop, throw this onto Blade Coil. So this is like kind of a, if you don't have Alchemist Gambit yet, you can maybe use this card to your advantage. So, not a bad card. I think this is the best uncommon we've seen so far. Ernest Gremlin, activate 3 red. This creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. When this creature dies, lose a reinforcement. Create 2 incubator tokens. Those cards gain oil counter X. We like X. X is this creature's power. Okay, so you can maybe buff this creature up and then sack it with a cut your losses or something, and then get a bunch of oil counters on an incubator. So, candidate for a decent piece of an oil counter deck. So, not going to discount it. Not very strong on its own, but could be a combo piece. Furnace Rains. Gain control of target opposing creature. Okay, so it's one of these gain control for until the end of your turn cards. Until end of turn, that creature gains enchanted. When this creature deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalker, create a gold token. So, okay, so basically it's one of those gain control cards, but you get a bonus of creating a gold token with it. So, it's whatever. I don't really play with these gain control cards, so if you do, then maybe you'll like this card, but yeah, it's not one I'll use. Gift of Completion. When this support enters the board, create 2 incubator tokens. Those cards gain oil counter 3, so not terrible. When a Phyrexian creature you control dies or loses a reinforcement, Surveill 2. Interesting. So, yeah, if you're playing around with Surveill, if you don't remember what Surveill does, you get to choose up to two of the 4 next cards in your library and destroy them. It's a way to filter through your deck and also put things you want into the graveyard for various effects. So, not a bad, not a bad card. Just need to figure out how to give the Phyrexian subtype to anything you want, and there might be a reason to use this card. So, yeah. Glistening Deluge. All creatures get -1/-1 till end of turn. All creatures get -1 till end of turn for each of their reinforcements. So, I guess it's trying to be like a anti-token card here. All white-green creatures get -2. All white-green creatures. Okay, so very situational. Probably not worth using, but somewhat interesting. Not really, actually. Palmy of Whispered Hopes. I like that artwork. That's really cool. When a creature you control gets buffed for the first time each turn, it gets +2/+2. Okay. Activate 3. Convert X gems to your planeswalker's color. X is this creature's power. Ooh. This creature gains can't attack and can't block until the beginning of your next turn. Okay, so there's something usable there, definitely. Activate 3, which is really nice. So if you already are using a gem conversion, something to convert gems, you might be popping a lot of these activate gems. So yeah, I like this card. I think this might be a poor man's Selvala, or even something to pair with Selvala. Because if you give Leyline to this creature, then it buffs temporarily, but usually a decent buff. So if you pop some, which I'm guessing they're going to be green gems, so there's going to be a bunch of green activate gems on the board that you can then easily pop with other green conversions. So yeah, definitely one to look out for. I think it's going to be a really good green gem converter for you. Unfortunately, it is a creature, so it's going to take up a slot, but I think there's definitely something there with this card. Maybe there's a way to temporarily remove can't attack and can't block from this creature as well. So, yeah, definitely keep an eye out for this one. This is by far the most intriguing uncommon I've come across so far. Lithomantic Barrage. Can't have its mana drained or raised. An opposing white or blue Vanguard at support at random loses 6 shields. If it can't, an opposing Vanguard support loses 2 shield. If it can't, deal 2 damage to target creature. That's a white or blue creature. Instead, deal 6 damage to that creature. I guess it does a lot for 4 mana, but the effects themselves are just a bit too weak for me to care that much. But I don't know. It is pretty good Vanguard hate for some of the worst ones. Uh, White or blue Vanguard is top. Well, pretty much all the good, just about all the good Vanguards are white or blue. So yeah, it could be usable in very certain situations, but I don't know. Could be maybe too pigeonholed to use a lot, but interesting card. Exile target creature, create 2 incubator tokens. Those cards gain oil counter 3. So this is just kind of an expensive removal card, but you can create incubator tokens, and it seems like you can target your own creatures as well, so it might be usable. Norn's Inquisitor. When this creature enters the battlefield, create 2 incubator tokens. Those cards gain oil counter 2. When a completed Phyrexian token enters the battlefield under your control, gets +1/+1. So I don't know if I've seen any completed Phyrexian token generators yet, but something to look out for, I guess. It's a 1/1 for 6, though. That's pretty bad. I don't know. Probably won't be used very often unless there's a way to really make a bunch of completed Phyrexian tokens on the battlefield. So we'll see. When you drain mana from your hand, you may have this creature can't attack and can't block until the beginning of your next turn. If you do gain 6 mana, well, that's weird. How many times are you draining mana from your own hand? So I don't know. I can't see a reason to use this card yet, but if there's something you can think of for it, yeah, I'll have to look into that to see if there's a way to drain mana from your hand that can make this kind of a looper maybe or something. I don't know. We'll see. Oracle of Tragedy, creature, human wizard, 1/3 with blocking, or with defender. When this creature dies, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. If you don't, pick one of the first 4 cards from your graveyard. Move that card to the top of your library. Well, most of the time, if things are in your graveyard, you want them there. And instead of moving from the graveyard, you want to move into play. So moving it to the top of your library. I can't right now think of a reason to want to do that. So yeah, probably not a card worth using. Forexing Awakening. When support enters the board, create 2 incubator tokens. Those cards gain oil counter 4. So that's pretty good. At the beginning of your turn, Phyrexian creatures you control gain vigilance until the beginning of your next turn. Well, I guess it depends on which Phyrexian creatures you have out, but I guess that could be interesting to give your creatures vigilance for fairly cheap. But yeah, I have to think about how to give creatures a Phyrexian subtype. But it seems like they'll be wanting us to do that with certain cards here. So something to keep an eye out for. But as of now, this card isn't overly impressive. Phyrexian Censor, Phyrexian Wizard, 3/3 for 9. When a player casts their first card each turn, disable all cards without the Phyrexian subtype in their hand until end of turn. That's interesting. So, kind of an anti-looper deck. Very good for, like, Danitha Blade, Ikor Moon Gauntlets, Tide Saga decks. Very interesting. When a creature enters the battlefield, if it doesn't have the Phyrexian subtype, it gains can't attack and it can't block until the beginning of your until the end of your next turn. So yeah, this is totally an anti-loop deck. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it being used in coalition events. So yeah, definitely one to keep an eye out for. Keep in the back of your mind if you're running. If we do see an onslaught of looping decks in the next coming coalition event. So yeah, put a pin in this one. Forexing Gargantua. When this creature enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards. Those cards gain 3 mana and you lose 4 life. For 16, I wish it was a little less expensive. Pretty good enter the board effect, but yeah, at 16, just a little too expensive. Ramosian Greatsword. At the beginning of your turn, your first creature gains +3 and gains and +1 and gains trample until the beginning of your next turn. It's got Convoke 4 and Equip 1, so at least it's an easy-ish card to get onto the battlefield, but just not that strong of an effect. But uncommon equipment hardly ever is. Pretty much the only one really that you want to use are ones that give you double strike. So maybe we'll see that soon. Ravenous Sailback. 13 mana, 3/4, dinosaur. When this creature enters the battlefield, destroy an opposing artifact or enchantment card with the greatest mana value at random. If you can't, this creature gains haste until end of turn. Okay, well that's actually pretty good enter the battlefield effect. You get to destroy all sorts of nasty stuff. An artifact or enchantment card with the greatest mana, so you're going to get rid of Portal to Phyrexia, any sort of enchantment, like, I don't know, people aren't playing Starfield of Nyx that often, but that's one. Enchantment Sagas, you destroy a Kami War. One with the Multiverse, that's a really expensive enchantment that you can get rid of with this card. And then I like that it also gets haste if you don't have any other things to get rid of. So yeah, this actually is a usable card. Definitely gonna think about it because it's similar to Conclave Naturalist, where you're destroying supports at the enter the battlefield effect, but you get it a little bit targeted with what it destroys, which makes it a little more predictable and therefore maybe a little stronger. So cool card. I like it. Render Inert. Target creature loses all of its buff and loses oil counter. Opposing support at random loses oil counter. Draw a card. So okay, this is just kind of an anti-oil counter card, which unless you know you're playing, I probably wouldn't use. I just feel like outright destroying a support or creature is more effective usually, but at least it does double duty. But I just don't know if people are that scared of oil counter to need to use this card, so probably not worth using. Sandstalker Moloch. When your opponent casts a blue or black card, if this card is in your hand, increases card's level by 1. Okay, so you pretty much have to use this card against a blue or black deck, or else it's just not really going to do much for you. At the end of each player's turn, if this card is in your hand, this card's level becomes 1. When this creature enters the battlefield, this card's level 2 or more. Pick one of the first 4 cards from your library. If that is a creature support card, fetch that card. So much for very little payoff. So 4/2 with flash. Yeah, just that was a lot of complex interactions for something that isn't even very useful. So yeah, pretty bad. Scornblade Berserker. When this creature dies, loses a reinforcement. Draw a card, gains 3 mana. Okay. When this creature enters the battlefield, target creature gets +1/+1. target's not this creature, that creature gains Berserker until end of turn. Until end of turn, that creature gains Enchanted when this creature dies, or lose a reinforcement, draw a card, gains 3 mana. It might be usable, especially in lower tiers. That's an okay effect. Um, and it's a card that's kind of meant to die quickly. Um, Drawing a card and gaining 3 mana in black is not a bad effect, but not overly powerful. So, um, might be a decent card for lower tiers. Scrappy Bruiser. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may have target creature you control without can attack and summoning sickness get 3 and gain trample to end of turn. If you do, until end of turn, that creature gains enchanted. At the end of your turn, return this creature to your hand. It gains half its mana. There might be some situations where you want to return a creature to your hand so you can recast it, but I don't know, gaining half its mana. I wish it gained full mana. That would be cool. But as of now, yeah, just not strong enough of an effect to really make me want to use this card. Seal from Existent. Okay, here's another one of those bind emblem removal cards. The support is destroyed or exile. Return the last creature with the bind emblem from your opponent's exile to the battlefield under their control. And at the beginning of your opponent's turn, your opponent may drain 3 mana from their hand. If they don't, the support gains 2 shield. Okay, so that's an interesting little twist in these types of cards. I've never seen that before, where you can make the support gain 2 shield if your opponent doesn't want to drain mana from their hand. So I guess playing against Greg, you'll have to see what he tends to do against this card. But as of now, it's an okay removal card, but not amazing. Shiv and Branch Burner, 15, but it's got Convoke 9, a flying dragon with haste, 4/4. Pretty straightforward. I don't know. I'm not overly impressed with it, but what do you guys think? Is a 4/4 dragon with haste and flying worth 15 mana? Probably not. Even with Convoke 9, that makes it a little more worth using, but yeah, just an okay card. Stoke the Flames. An opposing Vanguard support loses 4 shield if it can't deal 4 damage to any opposing target. So this is just like a poor man's, what's the one? That red mythic spell that can target any opposing target. Target a target. So yeah, just an okay card. I like that it has Convoke 6 at least, so it makes it a little more usable, but yeah, probably not going to be using this card. Storm the Seed Core. I love the artwork of this one. One of my favorites. Target creature you control gets +4/+4. Your creatures gain vigilance and trample until the beginning of your next turn. That's actually not a terrible. +4/+4 as a permanent buff is not bad. And your creatures gain vigilance and trample until the beginning of next turn. Both can be useful in various situations, but yeah, I actually don't hate this card. I might use it in certain decks. Cool. Yeah. Streetwise Negotiator, 0/2 for 6. When this creature enters the battlefield, target creature gets +1/+1. Okay, it's another one of these. If that target is not this creature, that creature's power becomes X until end of turn. X is equal to that creature's toughness. Okay. At the beginning of combat on your turn, this creature's power becomes Y until beginning of your next turn. Y is this creature's toughness. So I guess if you can think of something that will really buff up your creature's toughness, but nothing is coming to mind at the moment. So pretty weak effect overall. I can't think of a really strong reason to justify using this card over something else. Even some of the other creatures with the enter the battlefield effect similar. So yeah, Surge of Salvation, 4 mana spell with flash. You and your creatures gain hexproof until end of turn. Your creatures gain protection from red and protection from black until end of turn. So yeah, this is definitely the only reason this card is usable at all is because it has flash. So I mean, by combat phase, you're not really hexproof is really not that effective by that point. So that part of it is kind of whatever. So your creatures gain protection from red and black. Very situational. Only effective against um, about half or less of the decks that you're going to go against. It's a 4 mana spell, so at least it's not expensive. That's really the only thing it's got going for it. And it's got flash. But other than that, not good enough of an effect. Tandem Takedown. Creatures get +1 until end of turn, and opposing vanguards loses X shield. If it can't, deal X damage to target creature. X is the total power of your first 2 creatures. Okay, so I think the most useful part of this card is to make vanguards lose shields, but other than that, pretty weak card. Yeah, dealing X damage to a target creature, if it was any opposing target, then it'd be a lot more useful, especially in green. But as of now, it's just not effective enough. Tangled Skyline. When the support enters the board, gain 10 life. Okay. Create 2 incubator tokens. Those cards gain oil counter 5. At the end of your turn, Phyrexian creatures you control gain reach until the beginning of your next turn. Gaining reach is sometimes pretty effective, but for the most part, you're trying to keep your creatures on the board, and reach is going to make it so that it's a lot harder. But there are some cool things about this card. Gaining 10 life, giving 2 incubator tokens, oil counter 5, so that's 10 oil counters on the board right off the bat. And if you remember, I like pairing oil counter with Azuri, Claw of Progress. So this might be a card that you use in that deck, but I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Frexian Night. When you cast a spell that targets a creature, if you control that creature, create 2 incubator tokens. Those cards gain oil counter 2. Okay, so yeah, buffing spells, things like that is gonna be what you want to use this for. Yeah, this might be a way to create a lot of incubator tokens. We'll see if that actually matters, but interesting card. Wicked Slumber. Up to the first 2 opposing creatures gain stun counter 2. For 14 mana, that's kind of expensive, but at least it has Convoke 6. So this card is maybe usable. Stun counter 2 is a pretty good way to disable your opposing creatures for a few turns. So I don't hate it. Sleep with the Fishes is obviously going to be better, but at least it's untargeted. So that also helps. So yeah, this might be a decent anti-hexproof creature card too. So it might be usable. I'm not discounting it yet. Xeric Strobe Knight. This is interesting. You don't usually see creatures in blue with vigilance. So that much I kind of like about it. Creature Human Knight. Okay, so this is meant to be for the new Teferi. When you cast your second card each turn, you may drain 3 mana from your hand. If you do, create an Azorius Knight token. Okay, so yeah, I'll reserve my judgment on this card until I play with the new Teferi. We'll see if they let me review that Planeswalker, but yeah, if not, I don't know. Probably not a very strong creature to use in any other situation, so we'll see. Zhalfirin Lancer, Human Knight. When a knight creature enters the battlefield under your control, this creature gets +1 +1 and gains vigilance until the beginning of your next turn. Just not strong enough to really be worth trying. Maybe in lower tiers, but I think you have better options even at lower tiers. So, just a very mediocre card. All right, well, that was the last card of the uncommons. There's maybe three, maybe four that seemed anything at all intriguing, but yeah, not the uncommons might be the weakest cards of this set, so that's a bit disappointing. But all right, on to the rares.